No, I'm gonna have my name in a second, so I'll have my name up in a second.
Okay.
But it's Camilla Marlonda, so yeah. So my presentation on video game designers, and well, most people generally have like misconceptions on what video game designers are like, and they've had them for years because media like to present them as people that just like to play video games and that was their job. And so I just want to play this short video of like what people used to think. Well, people honestly these days still kind of think video game designers are like, so.
Oh, hurry up, man. Boss is coming in.
Dude, almost got it.
Hey guys, finished testing that game yet? I've got another one I need designed.
We just finished level 3 and need to tighten up the graphics a little bit.
Great.
Hey, I can't believe we got jobs doing this.
I know. And my mom said I would never get anywhere with these games.
Call Westwood College online, 800-914-8582. That's
Let me just say right now, that is not at all what video game designers are like. First of all, you can't tighten up graphics. I'm not an artist, but you can't do that. So that's just most people like to think that video game designers are like, but it's nothing like that. Okay, no, for this. So yeah, so my presentation is going to be about video game designers and what the job is more or less actually like. It's nothing boring, just it's not like playing video games all the time. So what most people think video game designers do, playing video games and under the name of research, and a lot of times, I think there was a presentation earlier about professional video game players and how, like in North Korea and things like League of Legends, StarCraft, there's actual professions about this sort of thing. Video game designers don't fall into that category. They make the games, they don't play the games. But most people like to think, oh, if they go into video game design, I get to do this stuff all the time. And for the most part, what game designers think game designers do, when we actually get into the field, we start to think that we might be able to create worlds and build things for other people to enjoy. We're artists, we're avant-garde and all that stuff. That's the kind of things that we like to do. In reality, this is kind of what we actually do half the time. We just bang our heads against the keyboard because things break. True story, I'm creating a game for a class. I tried to put a save function in the game and the sprite animation started going 10 times faster. I don't know how that happened. You tell me how that happened. That's a day in the life of my life. So yeah, that's basically what game design is, just like a bunch of trial and error, debugging, all that stuff. The common steps of actual game design. Generally, it follows a couple of simple steps. First of all, concept and planning. You need to plan out the game that you're going to make very intensely. You got to be able to know exactly what you're going to make before you start. And then you split off the task into several groups. Coding goes to one area, art design and music goes into another, level design, like yada yada. And then there's the lead designer, which runs the entire thing. He keeps the design document, makes sure that everybody's doing their job, sort of the director of a movie of sorts, except with video games. So for this presentation, I'm going to use a sample game, so to like explain how that game was made. And for our purposes, I'm going to choose what I consider to be one of the greatest games ever created, Superman 64.
Oh no.
No, I'm joking. I'm using Super Mario Brothers. Okay. So the first step that most people would go into when creating, for Super Mario Brothers, concept and planning, like I said. So here I got pictures of like concept art that was created when the game was made. So I can't really see it that clearly here, but you have things like squares and rectangles and arrows that show generally like how planning how the physics engine was meant to work out, or how like the player was supposed to move around on screen. Things like that show, these are things that like you have to like plan out and know exactly how your game's going to work before you start coding it. Otherwise, the programmer's going to get mad at you. And also you have like art that explains like how the character is meant to look and ideas for what you might want to do. Because a lot of times when you have your entire team together, you have to come up with ideas for what you want in your game. And a lot of times that things are going to get cut because either you don't have the technology for it or you don't have time for it or whatever. So, you have pictures of that where it's like, most people here are probably going to say, oh, that looks like Yoshi. Yeah, but that's for Super Mario Bros. 1. They've been wanting to put a dinosaur in Super Mario for a long time. So, things like that can generally get cut and might not end up getting put into games either until later or never. So, it's generally a good idea to understand what your limitations are. The coding. this was the closest I could find to actual source code for the original Super Mario Brothers, because the original source code is kind of hard to find. But I have been able to find other people that have been able to recreate the game. The source code is actually fairly simple for this game, but again, it's not that easy to create a game, because you might think to yourselves, oh, you just need to be able to like make the game move to different levels and jump and everything like that. Things like Unity and Game Maker make it seem easy. But if you're making a game from scratch, there's a lot more to it than that. You have to be able to create systems that can print up images to screen, things that can like entity systems that can like create an object and delete the object so you don't waste memory. Things like memory is things that you never think about with video game design, and that can really screw you over, because if you don't manage memory correctly, then you end up lagging the game, and then people get mad at you, and then you get 0 out of 10 on IGN. So yeah, and the coding this is the part that I work on mostly as a computer science major, and trust me, it is not an easy part of the game design process. And then we have the art, which again, most people go into game design, they go into the art part of it, because it's the easy part of it, it's the fun part of it. You know, here you have like the art from the original Super Mario Brothers. You know, you have to be able to know what your character looks like, you have to be able to present your character, understand that, you know, maybe how he looks in game is different than how he looks on the box art, so you have to be able to present that properly. And as a side note, I want to also talk about the pixel art, which a lot of video games these days include things like pixel art, because it's simpler to make, it's easier with like lower end graphics, a lot of indie developers like to use it, and a lot of people like to think that it's easier than real art, because it's just pixels, 8 by 8. That's not that hard. But in reality, it's really not that hard, not that easy. It's actually harder, because every single pixel in this character is vitally important to showing what this person is. So, you know, most people know what Mario looks like. Everybody's seen him. Hell, he's pretty much my co-presenter this entire presentation. So, this is pretty much almost a staple of what people know about video game design. So, what would happen if I were to say, remove just 2 pixels off this picture? And now Mario's wearing a swimming cap. I've suddenly turned him into Michael Phelps. You can still tell it's Mario, but he looks just wrong, just slightly wrong. And that's the thing about pixel design. It's like just missing 2 pixels, just 2 pixels. Suddenly you've got Mario. Now I don't know who this man is. I'm disturbed. I'm scared. I don't know. Call the police. I don't know. So and then another part, and then finally you have and well, not finally, you also have music, which not that many people think about the music when it comes to game design, because, you know, they hear it in the background, and that's the thing about music. It's generally background music. It's meant to accentuate the game rather than be the main part of it, unless you're playing like Dance Dance Revolution. So obviously, I thought about playing like the Super Mario Brothers theme, but let's be real, everyone here knows what the Super Mario Brothers theme is. You can pretty much play this part in your sleep, and even if you've never read music before. And there's the picture of the main composer for Super Mario Brothers, Koji Kondo. This wasn't technically a quote of his, but this was something that he apparently said during a Wired interview. So I thought this pretty much summed up exactly what music design for video games is like. If it doesn't accentuate the action, time up with the actions on screen, or harmonize with sound effects, then it's not really useful. A lot of music in video game design generally has to fit with what's happening on screen. So you're not going to have like a really solemn, melancholy song during like an action sequence in a video game. You have to make sure that it fits with the levels. So, you know, like the overworld levels in Mario are very actiony and very happy. The underworld levels are very like gloomy and suppressed and stuff like that. The castle levels are all jittery and accentuated, because, you know, you don't want to be in those levels. So all the music, despite not thinking about it, it does help to fit with the atmosphere. And then there's the level design, which you might think, oh, well, don't other parts of the team do this? There actually usually is like special parts of video game companies that work on specifically creating the designs for the levels. Because they usually are a very important part of the game that not many people think about. And it takes a lot of, it takes very special people to be able to figure out what people are thinking when they're playing a game and how they're going to react to certain orientations. For example, here I have these aren't like the entire levels of games, these are the end sections of all the levels of Super Mario Brothers. And if you look at this, you might notice a pattern. Specifically, most levels end with some sort of a staircase before the flagpole, which, you know, most people might think, oh, well, yeah, every Mario game does that. But you ever think about why they do that? Because for the most part, if they end the levels with a staircase, then what they might do is in the middle of a level, near the end of the game, they might have a staircase section, and then you might start thinking to yourself, oh, this is the end of the level. And then the level keeps going, and then you're like, oh crap, I was wrong. And they do that sort of thing all the time in the game. They'll give you false positives and then false negatives when they actually do put a flag staircase in the level that looks like it's fake, and then the level actually ends. So you have to start wondering where are the real ones, and then they become harder and harder to figure out to climb the staircase later on in the games. Here you can even see that there's like a staircase right before the real staircase, so there's like a double negative right there. And it takes a lot of hard work to be able to figure out exactly like how the player is going to react when they see something like this. Are they going to actually react? Are they going to notice this? Most people generally don't notice it, but subconsciously they're going to be like, oh crap, I thought this was the end of the level, I guess I was wrong. So things like that, it's like, as a designer for a game, you have to be able to know exactly what your audience is like. And then ultimately, in the end, like I said, there's going to be a lead designer that's going to be bringing the whole thing together. So in this case, obviously, Shigeru Miyamoto. You know, everybody knows who Shigeru Miyamoto is. He's the person that leads all the different people through the game. He might do certain parts of the game himself, maybe he'll do the coding, maybe he'll do some of the art, but generally his main job is to lead everyone, to make sure that everyone's doing their jobs, that they're doing it based on the design document, which is probably pages and pages of explaining exactly how the mechanics work, how the levels are laid out, what the music should be like, what the characters are, what the story is. He's the one that usually runs that. He's the one that makes sure that everyone does what they're supposed to. And if there's ever a change in the game, if something has to be cut, he's the one that's going to be telling everyone, okay, don't do this, but then add this. So he's sort of, so again, like I said, he's the director of the movie. He's the one that if the game is made, his name is probably going to be the one on the box art, even though he might not have done the most work. But he is the one that runs the whole show. And of course, what do you have in the end? What's the end result? Well, in this case, probably one of the most beloved and well-known video games of all time. But, you know, in the end, most video games are like this. They have different sections of people that do their job, a lead designer that brings it all together, and a lot more that goes into game design than just, you know, playing games for research like most people think. It's not an easy job. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and but the thing is that most people can get into it because, again, there's different sections to it. If you're an artist, you can get into it. If you're a programmer, you can get into it. If you're a psychologist, you can get into it because, again, level design depends a lot on knowing the people that are playing your game and how they're going to react to certain things. So there's a lot of things like that that can go into it. So a lot of people can go into it even if you don't think you can, and it's honestly a really fun industry to get into, and honestly that I'm excited to be getting into it when I leave college. So yeah, this is probably one of the most interesting kinds of jobs that you can get because of all the different things that you can do with it, and also probably one of the most rewarding. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.